Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. Conservative, not bitter indeed. My pleasure to be here. Email if you want to be part of the conversation today, Todd at toddhuffshow.com. You can also text us 317-210-2830. We might be changing that number soon, but regardless, my friends, it's good to be here. Thank you for joining us. You know, what are the common themes that are out there today? And by today, I don't mean this exact day, just happened this morning. I mean today, as in something that's been prevalent, something that's been commonly pushed, something that's been part of the narrative for some time now, but in this general time era, basically in the time since Trump, is that our country, as you know, they say, is under attack. It's under assault. It's at risk of collapsing. Our democracy is at risk. And I will tell you something. And this is what I think at its core. There's a lot of things going on at its core right now. We talked about the Epstein situation on the program yesterday. But at its core, right now in this country, there is a battle between two predominant opinions. One of them, of course, is supported and propped up and carried by the 7 pillars of propaganda. It is supported by the people running the bureaucratic state. It is amped up and magnified in the media. Woke business helps carry the water. The other pillars of propaganda are doing the same thing, pushing the leftist version of events, which is that America was totally fine until Trump came along and threatened her very existence. That's the one side of the argument. The other side is what has been most dangerous is what has been happening throughout this country over the past many decades. And there's several stories in today's stack, my friends, that kind of highlight this. We don't do themes on this program. We talk about what's going on with you in the day's news and so forth, but we don't do themes, but I did notice today that there's a lot of this stuff kind of coming to a head, and that is what I want to talk about here today in the time that we have available. Before I do that, though, my friends, let me ask you this question. Would you rather, if I gave you a choice, and in a sense you have this choice to make. When we were younger, we would play this game, Would You Rather? My best friend said this all the time, mostly rhetorically to himself, but would you rather spend hours in your doctor's office talking about your cholesterol levels or take 2 soft gels each and every day? I know what I would choose to do, my friends. That's why I take Solti. It's an all-natural, clinically proven. Science has spoken on this, by the way. Clinically proven dietary supplement that helps lower cholesterol. There's no prescriptions. There's no doctor's visits. Folks, it's not even a drug. It's a natural supplement, and all you have to do is take 2 of these Solti soft gels a day. That's all it takes as a good first step to take care of your heart and, as you know, to lower your cholesterol, which it's done for a lot of people. So, Solti.com is where you can go, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. As a valued listener of this program is going to get you 50% off your first order and free shipping to boot. That's Solti.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper here today on what I mean when I say that there's, at its core, and I've said this multiple ways. One of the challenges when you're in this seat behind the microphone is trying to think, how do I communicate this a little bit differently? How do I help convey these ideas and principles? How do I persuade people who may not see it this way at all? How do I wake them up to reality. Of course, many of you have been awakened to the reality that what I said is spot on accurate. But some folks that tune in and some folks that you are going to deal with are not able to see this. They thought everything was fine prior to 10 years ago when Trump came down that escalator in Trump Tower in New York City. They thought everything was fine. This was the way our government was supposed to work. There was nothing really going wrong and so forth. But that, of course, is not the case. I'm just going to go through a couple of headlines here. A couple of headlines to illustrate that there are, of course, there's many more that I'm going to mention, but just these are headlines that are out there today. Headline Town Hall, remember Obama when he was president back from 2009 until 2017, Obama's CIA director's reaction to the DOJ investigating him was totally insane. I might play these clips, friends, but former CIA Director John Brennan is acting flummoxed, I should say, bamboozled. He's acting as though he's totally caught off guard as to why the Department of Justice is investigating him, in spite of the fact that he allegedly lied to Congress before a congressional hearing in 2017, and he used, this was all connected, one kind of big narrative, but he was pushing the phony, fake Russian dossier. You remember that, by the way, right? The Russian dossier that basically, this was Hillary Clinton funded. We're talking golden showers. We're talking Russian collusion, delusion. Trump partnering with Vladimir Putin, allegedly, probably flying out to the Kremlin, having some vodka, planning how to use Putin's marketing people to trick people using social media who wanted to vote for Hillary, who should have voted for Hillary, into voting for Trump. That's what we're supposed to believe. That's back in 2016, during the 2016 campaign. And so that whole thing, the Trump campaign being spied upon, that all happened before Trump came into office, my friends, and allegedly destroyed everything and put our democracy at risk. Call me crazy, but I think having a government spy on the opposition's candidates, I think having the government push a narrative that Russia is trying to get a guy elected named Donald J. Trump, or whoever it is for that matter, pushing that narrative relentlessly, making it up, pushing it, and so forth, is more of a risk to our quote-unquote democracy than anything Trump has ever dreamed of doing. What about this? Headline here. This is at lifezet.com. Biden's doctor pleads the fifth. Walks out of hearing on Joe's mental decline. So there was Dr. Kevin O'Connor. I'm just going to touch on these now. We may dig deeper as the program unfolds, but Dr. Kevin O'Connor, who was the former doctor of Joe Biden, his personal physician, he was in a closed-door deposition with the House Oversight Committee yesterday, and he invoked the Fifth Amendment when he was being asked questions about Biden's health and the alleged efforts that were being made to conceal his medical issues while Biden was in office. Who would have thought? Now, call me crazy, but I think it's more of a risk to, quote-unquote, our democracy if we have a guy in office running the country who's not running the country, who's not equipped to run the country. I don't mean just having bad ideas like Zoran Mamdani does. I'm talking about a guy that doesn't know what day it is. I'm talking about a guy that doesn't know what his name is, where he is, what he's doing, what he's supposed to be doing. I'm talking about an administration that takes or makes use of the auto pen in very questionable ways. In fact, one of the signatures, may not be Joseph Biden's. It might be, some believe it's Dr. I almost forgot to say doctor there. Dr. Jill Biden's. So That seems to me to be more of an existential threat to our democracy than anything President Trump. I mean, my goodness, they're hiding from us the mental capacity of the President of the United States, allegedly. They have allegedly done whatever they could to prevent people from knowing his true capacity, capabilities. And then there are people on top of that that are making decisions for this country, allegedly, ostensibly, who we don't even know who they were. We're not even sure still. Who was the person making these calls? Where are they? Would you please tell us? They still insist that it was Biden, I guess, while at the same time finally starting to acknowledge that there were real problems. They don't really acknowledge the level, the scope of the problem, but they have to come up with an answer as to why they lost the election, and they have to blame Biden at some point. And so they'll blame him in some, kind of borderline sort of way without actually really coming out and confessing the true scope and magnitude of what was going on here. But call me crazy. I think it's more of a threat to our democracy to have someone running this country who's not been elected by the people. That's actually the definition. People get upset because whenever I point out that a lot of people, when they talk about democracy, they don't really understand what a pure democracy is, and I point that out. I remind people that we actually have a constitutional republic, which, by the way, certainly has elements of democracy in it. You could even call it a constitutional, democratic republic is probably accurate. Constitutional democracy, maybe. But really, republic needs to be in there. Constitutional republic is the best way to describe what we have. You could say constitutional democracy, maybe. Democratic republic, possibly. But not a pure democracy. See, the whole thing about a democracy is that it's the will of the people, the rule, majority rules. Well, how did we have a guy in office, or we don't even know, guy, girl, it, whatever pronouns they go by today, we don't know who is making the decisions in the White House. I don't think it's very democratic to have someone in the White House who wasn't voted on by the American people. By the way, Kamala Harris received exactly 0 votes in the Democratic primary, and she was their candidate. She's who the Democratic Party put on their ticket. She didn't campaign. She didn't try to become the nominee. She was content on being the vice president, probably expecting if Biden was to win, she was going to be, through the 25th Amendment or Biden's resignation or something. They all knew that Biden couldn't do 4 more years. They knew that they could they were hoping they could just get through the election by hiding his capacities, his lack thereof, from the American people. So her plan was to simply take advantage of that. Her plan was to say, look, I'll be vice president, I'll be appointed president because Biden's no way making it through the next 4 years. And so that was her path. She didn't run. She didn't get a single vote to be president of the United States, or the nominee, I should say. She got votes to be president once they forced her onto the ballot. But they did not. She did not get any votes during the presidential primary. Not for president, anyway. And I certainly think that doesn't sound I'm just going through these stories and headlines, my friends. They tell us that Trump's the real risk, the real threat, the real danger to our quote-unquote democracy. But it sounds to me like there's a whole lot of other risks that are coming from people who have been there for a long time, who are on the other side of the political aisle, who are a risk to our democracy, the rule of law, the Constitution, our constitutional republic. Then is Trump. More to say on this, friends. Let me pause for a moment and tell you that we have, and I haven't mentioned this on here yet, but we are in the final process of filling some of our key advertising spots. And I know, most of you are listeners and all that, and forgive me for saying this, but some of you out there have businesses, and you listen to this program, and you have listened maybe for a long time. We're looking for just a couple of more of our top-tier packages. I plan to have by the grace of God here, the rest of these spoken for, these top-tier packages here in the month of July. So I am asking you, if you're interested, you can do two things. You can email todd@toddhuffshow.com and just put advertising, and we'll make sure that we get with you. Or if you prefer, you can text us. Just text advertising to 317-210-2830. Again, 317-210-2830. I've just got a couple of these left. We're talking actually with quite a few folks, but as I was thinking about this, as I was getting ready for the program, I thought I should mention it on here in case there's anyone out there who would be interested in partnering with us, becoming one of our top-tier advertisers. It's much more affordable than many people would think. But anyway, I invite you to reach out. Advertise. Just put that in an email or in the text. And again, you can email todd@toddhuffshow.com, or you can text 317-210-2830. Just text the word advertise, and we'll take care of that. All right. So let's get back to this, though. Let's get back to what else is going. What about this? What about this? You want to talk about a danger and a risk to our democracy? A danger and a risk to our foundational freedoms in this country? What about this? Something else that has nothing to do with Trump. This is thefederalist.com. $1 million, and 9 years later, court tosses conviction of man who tweeted Hillary meme. There was a guy, Douglas Mackey, who was sentenced to 7 months in federal prison. Listen to what I'm saying. This sounds, I know that this was news at the time, and it's a travesty to this man's life, to the Constitution, to the rule of law. But this, his sentence, his conviction has been vacated. He's going to be acquitted. Douglas Mackey. He was sentenced to 7 months in federal prison for reposting some Hillary Clinton-themed memes in 2016. That's what now, I don't know about you. Here's one of them, I think. Is this one of them that he retweeted? A tweet with, or maybe it's Facebook. No, it's, I don't know, tweeting, Facebooking, whatever. I think it is Twitter at the time. It's got a picture of Hillary. It's got Hillary's logo down there. Remember that H with the arrow pointing off to the right as you're looking at it. I'm with her. Do you remember this Hillary campaign? I'm with her. Oh, yes. So it's got Hillary's picture. It's got her logo down at the bottom. And it says this in the meme. It says, save time, avoid the line, vote from home, text Hillary to whatever number, and we'll make history together this November 8th. And then there's a small disclaimer copy, which I can't even really read on my screen. And so this meme was basically telling Hillary voters, hey, avoid the line. You can vote for Hillary if you just text Hillary to some number. And which, you know what, I remember for years. I remember back, my goodness, as a young man, people saying stuff like, remember, of course, Election Day is on Tuesday. You would hear people who were Democrats who say Republicans vote on Wednesday, Democrats vote on Tuesday. You would hear Republicans say Republicans vote on Tuesday, Democrats vote on Wednesday. This is a common joke, that's out there. This sort of thing has existed for a long time. And, listen, if people are truly trying to deceive people as to when to vote, that's not cool. But at the same token, if you don't know how to vote when Election Day is, that's on you too, right? I mean, that's a big part of this. But anyway, he tweeted that. That's the screenshot of it. And the DOJ said that this was trying to trick people out of voting. And effectively, this was, I guess, a war on our democracy. You remember that theme was prevalent back in those days. Anyway, he's been released, or he's been acquitted, his sentence has been vacated. So, or his conviction has been vacated, and he's going to be acquitted. So, but call me crazy, but the world that existed, that charged this man, that tried this man, that convicted this man, seems to be a lot more dangerous than the system that we have under Trump. In fact, my friends, we seem to be heading in the right direction when it comes to Trump. We're limiting our the amount of insanity. We're exposing some of this stuff. This happened before Trump. We had someone who was pursued and sent to jail for a meme. And of course, other things that I've referenced here in this program as well. You know, friends, one of the biggest challenges for conservatives like you and me is finding ways to ensure that our values align with the things that we do, including how we invest our money. That's why I love what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in what they call biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with our faith and our values. So we're not funding things that go completely against what we believe in. And believe it or not, my friends, a lot of investments out there are funding things that would make the average conservative Christian's skin crawl. So they do all the heavy lifting, helping align your investments with your purpose and your goals, and they give you a tool to help you know how to do that. And all you have to do to access that tool is visit 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. And you can complete a little assessment to see where your investments are. They will help analyze what your investments are help funding so that you're aware of what your dollars are supporting. 48 Financial, because your money should work for your values. All right, my friends, I'm getting here to the end of the first segment of the program today. So I want to continue talking about these things because, again, remember, we've been told the narrative is that the democracy our democracy, as they call it, is under great risk. It's in grave danger because of President Donald J. Trump. When in reality, my friends, I think that this country's been in a whole lot more danger by what's been happening when no one was paying attention and no one was ringing the alarm bell except for people like little old me with this podcast and radio show. Quick time out, though, my friends. Got to take a break. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. You know, if your friends or co-workers or neighbors, maybe you've got some family members, I don't know, they want to tell you that this nation is in grave danger because Trump is, challenging, putting at risk our democracy. Just remind them some of the things that we talked about. There's a lot of other examples as we're just going through. This is just today's headlines. I do want to, there's a couple of sound bites. Which ones do I want to do first? So, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Actually, she was, I don't want to say the subject of today's Todd Talk, but I mentioned her in today's Todd Talk because Ketanji Brown Jackson was the lone dissenting voice in a recent Supreme Court case that effectively said that Trump, the executive, forget about Trump, but the president, the head of the executive branch, surprise, surprise, in an 8-1 decision. So this means that this included Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. This was so obvious that those two leftist lunatics realized that the executive branch 100% should be able to have at least a voice in determining the overall size of the federal workforce. Now, why? If you're new to politics, I'll take a moment to explain this. But the reason why that is necessary or an obvious conclusion is because all of these, any of the alphabet soup initials you hear spouted off by the federal government, Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security, right? DOE, DHS, FBI, CIA, EPA, on down the list, my friends. All of those things, they all fall under. This is shocking to some folks when I tell them this, but they all fall under the executive branch. And who's at the top of the executive branch? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the President of the United States is head of the executive branch. And what does that mean? Well, that means that he is effectively, in a manner of speaking, at least there's a similarity here. He's like the CEO of the executive branch, effectively. Now, he's elected, and there's the Constitution, and there's oversight from other branches of government, all that stuff. He's answerable to the people, but he's effectively like the CEO. So just imagine in just a common sense scenario, imagine making the case that the CEO of a company could not determine the size of its workforce. I mean, it's preposterous. It truly is preposterous. Now, the court may rule in a particular, and this was in the opinion. I think it was written by, well, this particular part was written by Elena Kagan. I don't know if it was a concurring opinion. I don't know if she wrote the majority opinion, but basically she said in the opinion that the court was just effectively saying that what I just told you, the executive branch, the size of the federal workforce can be determined by the president. She said, we're not actually saying that what he's doing in any particular case is right. There might be an example of where the president is doing something that's outside of federal law when it comes to the workforce. But in general, the concept that the president should be able to control the size and scope of the federal workforce is absolutely just common sense, right? I mean, that's 100% conclusion that reasonable people should all be able to come to, except for Ketanji Brown Jackson, who, as I said in the Todd Talk today, is still trying to figure out how to define woman. You might remember she was asked that during her confirmation hearing when Joe Biden nominated her to the court for, listen, take this for however you want to take it. I don't even care. I've done this for 10 years. I don't care. I don't mean this in any bad way, but people take things however they want to take them. And candidly, I don't care if I've got some knucklehead out there who doesn't want to listen to what I'm really saying. Take this for whatever you want to take it as. But the only reason that we know of that Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court was because of her race and because of her gender. She's a black woman. This is what Biden told us. It's the only thing he told us about the credentials of the person he was going to nominate when there was a vacancy open for the court during his presidency. She's going to be black and she's going to be a woman. What that has to do with, listen, the Supreme Court, courts in general, they are not designed to be representative of the people. It doesn't mean that we should strive not to make them. It's not even irrelevant at all because what we have in the court system, what we should have, are people who are interpreting and applying the law and the Constitution as intended. This is how this should work, as intended by the people who wrote the Constitution, the founders, or any amendments that were added to the Constitution after our founding. Any laws, they should be interpreting and applying the laws. They are actually not the voice of any people or people group. They're actually the voice of the law and the Constitution. The voice of the people is in our Congress. If you want to make the case that Congress should demographically look like the people, that at least makes more sense. I'm not saying that it's how we should be making our decisions, but I'm saying that at least makes more sense. The idea that a judge, the race and gender of a judge should matter is really crazy to me, because the judge should just be interpreting the law and the Constitution and applying it in a way that's consistent with how this was all set up to work by the people who put it together. And we don't have that. In fact, we've got a representative on the Supreme Court, a justice on the Supreme Court, who told us, She was being interviewed. Ketanji Brown Jackson was being interviewed. Where was she being interviewed? I'm looking here, headline the Federal, or article at the Federalist. Headline here. There we go. DEI hire Ketanji Brown Jackson. I write Supreme Court opinions to tell people how I feel. This is what she said. She says this in this interview here. Let me make sure I grab the right clip. Yeah, here it is. Let me get this. She's being asked questions. I don't even know who the person asking it. I'm sure it says it in the article. Yeah, it's ABC anchor Davis. I can't think of her first name. Anyway, Lindsay Davis. There we go. So she's sitting up here with Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's called, on stage, it's called the Global Black Economic Forum, talking again to a Supreme Court justice. The job of a Supreme Court justice should be apply the rule of law, the Constitution, the appropriate statutes, and then evaluate a case that is brought before them. Applying, sometimes it's complicated. You got a law that says this. You got the Constitution. Does it really mean that? How does it apply? What is precedent? All this sort of stuff, right? This is sometimes it's I think fairly obvious and easy. People just don't want to accept the rule of law. Just for example, like anything regarding to deportations and border security. This is all pretty black and white, cut and dry. But people want to make it complicated because the mind will justify what the heart desires. If they don't want deportations, they will come up with excuses to put into opinions that prevent the president from being able to enforce the law. That's what happens. And it happens because of justices and judges like Ketanji Brown Jackson. Listen to this exchange she has with Lindsay Davis talking about, how she makes decisions on the court. Listen,
you're very vocal
unbelievable.
On the bench. This past term, you spoke roughly 79,000 words, far more than any of your other colleagues.
Saying nothing still.
A few of your
giggle.
A few of your dissents have made headlines, some of them criticizing you. Do you tune it out? What do you do? Does it ever get to you?
Do I hear about it sometimes? Yes. Am I on social media? No. And it's funny to me how people focus on how much I talk at oral argument. As I said, I was a judge for 8 years before I became a Supreme Court justice. And I said to people, why are you surprised? This is the way I always operated. People are not paying attention. I was always this person on the bench. And so it's been a bit of an adjustment because as a trial court judge, you have your own courtroom. Yes. So you can go on as long as you want. And so trying to make sure that my colleagues get to ask some questions has been a challenge for me.
Okay, get to the point here.
But I've enjoyed it. I really have. And, I do think that the work that I'm doing is important and that I'm doing it to the best of my ability. When I went to my investiture, which is the big formal ceremony where they swear you in, and the big party that you have in celebration of being inducted onto the bench as a Supreme Court justice, I said in my speech, I have a seat at the table now, and I'm ready to work. And I meant that. So I'm doing what I can.
Doing the work.
With this position.
She's doing what she can. She has a seat at the table. This is, again, being a justice or a judge is not meant to be a representative of the people. This is a spokesperson for the law, the Constitution. You're not supposed to be there to insert your own beliefs, opinions, and so forth. But she talks about that, too. I'm just out of time. I can't play that part. Got to take a time out, my friends. Be back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to play the part of Ketanji Brown Jackson's quote that I find to be, again, we're talking here today about things that were posing an existential threat to our democracy, as the left says, our constitutional republic, as I would say. They want you to believe that Trump is the danger. They want you to believe that how everything was working besides, since, I should say, before Trump or outside of Trump's reign and influence and so forth. They want you to believe that that was the risk. The way that things were not the risk. The way that things are under Trump, that's where the risk comes from. I'm here to say that that's completely false and fake news. And I've given several examples. And what Ketanji Brown Jackson says here about how court decisions are reached and how she wants to communicate her feelings about an issue through a court decision. I know that she was nominated after Trump left office. She was nominated by Biden, appointed by Biden, and then, of course, confirmed by the Senate. But this is dangerous stuff. Remember, the only reason we were told, again, that she should be the Supreme Court justice is because she was a certain race and a certain gender. Has nothing to do with her qualifications, because if we had discussions about qualifications, if the average American understood what was the role of the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court justice and that sort of thing, this sort of judge, this sort of justice would not be anywhere near the Supreme Court. This is a much greater risk to our democracy, our constitutional republic, than anything Trump had done. The real risk is what's happening by those running the status quo, the bureaucratic state. They are the ones that put this country at great risk, not President Donald J. Trump. In fact, Trump is doing what he can to reverse the stuff that's gotten us into the mess to begin with. Now, that's not a blanket approval of everything Trump says and does, although I'm hard-pressed to find the things that I don't think are good for this country that he does. The problems existed long before Trump. The problems that the government, the status quo bureaucratic state, the typical politician has created for this country are infinitely more problematic than anything Trump has done, and that includes Supreme Court justices like Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'll get to that in a moment, my friends. Mike Lindell, Mike Pillow, and My Pillow, excuse me. The team there want to say thank you for those that have purchased their products here on this program. They've been a partner of ours for a couple of years. They want to say thank you for your continued support. They also want you to know that they're offering a special on their Percale bed sheets. You can get a set of those for as low as $24.98. They're breathable. They have a cool and crisp feel. Deep pockets that fit over any size mattress. And for a limited time, when you place an order with MyPillow over $100, you're going to get $100 in free digital gifts. So all you got to do is go to MyPillow.com. Be sure to use my name, Todd, during the checkout process, promo code Todd, to get these special on the Percale bed sheets or discounts on other products there as well. MyPillow.com, promo code Todd, my friends. All right, here we go. I want to play this soundbite. This is Ketanji Brown Jackson explaining why it is so important for her to be able to write an opinion and tell you what she thinks about an issue. This is not what Supreme Court justices should be concerned about, my friends. Here you go. Why? I know you don't believe this, but I literally just listened to this before, right when I was coming back from the break. And it is, I don't know if it's broken its connection. Is that what it did? Try this again. I've got to refresh this now. There are days when I feel like if it can go wrong, it can go wrong. It's still not connecting. I don't know what the problem here is. Let me reconnect this. Bear with me, my friends. I got to be There we go. I don't know why I disconnected and then reconnected my Bluetooth connection here. All right, here she is, Ketanji Brown Jackson, explaining to us why she, I guess, wants to be a Supreme Court justice so that you know what her opinions on issues are. Listen to this.
I think the nice part about being on the court is that you have the opportunity, whether you're in the majority or in the dissent, to express your opinions. You mentioned Justice Breyer. One of the things he used to say, sometimes people say, well, the court is so secretive. Nobody knows what goes on in the court. And he used to always say, I don't understand that. We are the only institution where people actually write their opinions when they vote. They tell you exactly what it is. And I just feel that I have a wonderful opportunity to tell people, in my opinions, how I feel about the issues. And that's what I try to do.
I'm going to circle back on that. There's a famous quote that says, if you're not scared, you're not paying attention. And just because you have such a seat, a unique seat, are you concerned about the state of democracy today?
Oh, please.
You know, my feelings about the state of democracy have been expressed in the context of my opinions when issues come up related to democracy. So it's hard to say, you know, am I concerned in a general way? The concerns that I have articulated in my opinions.
Now, this passes as very sophisticated for some people. She wants you to know she's written an opinion so that you know how she feels about an issue. Listen to me. With all due respect, and this would go to every Supreme Court justice, I don't care how you feel about an issue. I care about what the law says. I care about what you think and, well, when you apply the law and the Constitution. This is crazy talk. This is the real risk, my friends, to our democracy. Gotta go, SDG.